All right, everybody, welcome to the third episode of Gemcast. To all our loyal listeners out there who've hung on to us for so long, I have a very exciting episode for you today. I'm joined by a dear friend, Ashka.
Hi, Ayush. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. So, Ashka, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Dear
It's a
friend, dear
pleasure to
family
be here.
friend, dear friend of the podcast, and also a very exciting guest because we've had two guests so far. The first one, we've talked about rough selling and rough buying in the local Jaipur market. The second
Hmm.
podcast was with a geologist talking about mining in Tanzania as well as Greenland and talking a bit about how global mining works. But this particular podcast is very close to my heart because it merges not just jewelry and gemstone buying and selling, but also the world of art and fashion. So, from there, we're going to begin our podcast. Ashka, why don't you start by introducing a bit about what exactly it is that you do and how you got there?
Of course. I currently work at an auction house where I specialize in curating the catalog for the jewelry auctions. And I've always been inclined towards art. Even as a kid, art was always in my blood. And growing up in a jewelry and diamond centric background has really molded me into someone who has a great respect and a lot of appreciation for everything that's more like creative and exclusive. So when I was approached by an auction house, I truly felt like it was almost like my calling. So that's how I got into the auction space, and I love modern art, especially Indian modern art. So to learn more about the Indian masters, the ones who shaped modern art, how to identify their pieces, and to really appreciate their aesthetics is what really brought me to where I am right now.
Now, from my understanding, globally, when we talk about auction houses, there are a few that pop to mind. Of course, Christie's is
Mhm.
up there. There's Sotheby's, there's Phillips, there's
Yes.
Bonhams, there's a few other auction houses. But what is a point of interest for me is that you work in a very Indian-centric auction house. What is the
Yes.
name of the auction house you work in?
I work at AstaGuru Auction House. It's India's premium auction house, and we specialize in a couple verticals. But our main specialty up until now used to be Indian modern art. And just a little fact for all the listeners: we are the largest Indian modern art auction house in the world, with a record-breaking Tayyab Mehta sold for 58 crores at hammer price. So that is a little bit about our auction house. We have verticals in jewelry, watches, vintage cars, collectibles, silverware, and art.
So, speaking a bit about your auction house and about your role in it, what is your
Mhm.
specialty and what is the area of interest in the particular auction space that you look at?
Of course. So I specialize in curating the catalog for the jewelry auction, and I'm a jewelry advisor. One part of my job is to source jewelry pieces that I believe would be apt for our upcoming auctions. So the way we do this is we would break it down into a couple categories. The main categories we look at through market research and trends we've seen have been very attractive. One of them is vintage. Anything above 100 years is considered an antique piece, and these
Mm-hmm.
are always very attractive towards our collectors. Another thing that we see a lot of traction towards is more high jewelry, exclusive pieces, either exclusive in terms of design or exclusive because of the stones used within the design. You may have a very simple necklace with a paraiba, which is a very rare stone,
Mm-hmm.
which would sell at a very high price in an auction house. So my interest lies half in sourcing these pieces and the other half in being a jewelry advisor. So if a client comes and is interested in a piece of jewelry or is able to tell us what they're looking for, to be able to steer them in the right direction and to help them find what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my role within the company. But as I mentioned, Astaguru is known for several verticals. So it is important to have knowledge across all of them. So I have also learned a lot about Indian modern art, the Indian masters who shaped modern art, learning about watches and everything. So basically, it's a very luxury driven auction house, which is definitely something of interest to me. So every day at work, you learn something new without even realizing it.
When I think about auction houses, the I think the first thing that springs to my mind, or
Mhm.
potentially any listener who's listening, is the idea of people sipping champagne in fancy
Yeah,
suits and
that
dresses.
elite, that elite experience, right?
Exactly, exactly. But
Yeah.
just for our listeners out there, I just wanted to also clarify that I've seen Ashka getting down and dirty into business, where she was just there in the Jaipur show, and it's a lot of scouting, a lot of going around to different booths, trying to just find that minute niche little
Mhm.
detail that can prove that
Yes.
something is a vintage as opposed to something that might be like a counterfeit, something that might be real versus synthetic. So it's very glamorous from the outside world, but from my understanding, and Ashka, you'll be able to speak a lot better about this. Is it is a
Of
lot of
course.
work to put together an auction, and what really goes
100%.
into it.
Well, if I'm speaking in terms of jewelry, the biggest obstacle we have within jewelry auctions in India is your family babu.
Mm-hmm.
Every piece somebody sees, be it in a catalog for an auction or be it at Bridal Asia or any exhibition, the
Mm-hmm.
first thing they say about the piece is, "Can my babu make this?"
Mm-hmm.
Because we do not appreciate it as a design, as a piece of art. So to be able to scout, like you said, go to so many vendors and to be able to scout the exact amount of pieces that we need for the auction can be very challenging, because that is the first question we have to ask ourselves. Will my client think that a babu can make this?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the answer to that question is yes, it's something we have to discard or
Mm-hmm.
like say no to for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the first thing we have to ask before we start sourcing for our catalog. Once
Mm-hmm.
we've made a selection of the further pieces, we have in-house valuation teams that will value the piece according to what they believe the reserve price for that piece should be. The reserve price in an auction house refers to the starting opening bid. Once that has been determined, that's when the bidding starts. All of our bidding happens online in real time, so it's accessible to people globally. And post bidding, if there's been any bidding war, if there's not been any bidding war, the auction ends. And then we get to do a lot of market research off of this. The auction for us who work at an auction house does not end the second the auction ends.
Mm-hmm.
It ends after that when we do our market research and we see the kind of data we have collected through the auction. So that is how we know that these antique pieces have a lot of traction. That is how we know anything Art Deco inspired is very much loved within India as well. So that's when the real work starts for the next auction.
Right.
So with every auction that passes, we have a lot more data and a lot of, and basically a mental algorithm of what is going to work and what is not going to work.
Now, just to kind of put this forward, but there is a lot of essentially data driven analytics that are kind of pushing jewelry when we talk about auction houses, or when we talk about in general any sort of a sale that happens. But jewelry has a very sort of emotional feel to it, and many
Exactly.
times it is a gut feeling that certain times you might like a piece but your team feels otherwise, or vice versa. So how do
Mhm.
you kind of distinguish or decide when these sorts of conflicts arise, and what piece gets to be put into the auction versus what piece gets discarded after being in the selection process?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because it's something, we also sometimes have conflicts about, like internally. But the one thing to remember is that there is a market for everything. Like I've definitely come across pieces sourced by others or seen them in catalogs and other auctions that I initially found quite unremarkable.
Hmm.
But once you start to understand the piece and you see its provenance, the
Hmm.
value of the piece becomes much clearer. It's all about like the rarity of the piece, like the rarity of the piece and the personal connection that a collector may have to it. So while I may see the piece and wonder like why would somebody buy this?
Hmm.
There is a reason it exists in the first place.
And there's
So
experience
to
involved. People have a lot of, people who have experience are sometimes able to predict that maybe this will work, this won't work. And
exactly. So like I said, through previous auctions, we're really able to predict what we think will work or not. So there's many times when we'll go to a vendor, we'll see a piece of jewelry and we're like, this will definitely work for us. So for example, Basra pearls are very, very hot. Like
hmm.
people love Basra pearls. So if we see a piece with Basra malas or something, we don't need to think too much. We know that this piece is going to work.
Hmm.
So the more auctions we do, the more registrations we get into the auction house, and the more pieces we sell, the more we can confidently try to figure out exactly what it is that our clients will want to see.
Hmm. What advice would you have for a young person looking to start working in the auction industry? And did you in particular start off from your childhood thinking that you're going to work in an auction house? What did you study, and how did you end up in the auction industry?
So for me, I feel like if I got to have a coffee with 5-year old Ashka,
Mm-hmm.
she'd be thrilled right now to know that I work at an auction house, that too in art and jewelry,
Mm-hmm.
because it's always been my passion. I've always been surrounded by art and I've always been painting. And I mean, jewelry, like you said, I've grown up seeing it. So for me, this is like a dream come true. But I didn't study this. I'm actually from science. I did my master's and bachelor's in neuroscience from
Mm-hmm.
London,
Wow.
and because of COVID pandemic, I had to put my studying became remote,
Mm-hmm.
so there was a lot of free time sitting at home, which is when I started customizing sneakers and painting sneakers for people, and it became a side business, and now I can proudly say it turns 5 years old in August, so I'm really happy about
Congratulations
that.
to you. Yeah.
Thank you. So that was a big change for me because of COVID and because of my sneaker business. I got really inclined towards a creative field.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became a jewelry designer. I worked as a diamond grader. And then I got to work at an auction house where everything I've done has really like kind of come together. The science has helped me with my evaluation. The sneaker artist and all has really helped me appreciate art for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And diamond grading has helped me again with evaluating a piece.
Mm-hmm.
So, the main piece of advice I can give a young person who's starting in an auction house is very strongly to make sure you do your research. You should check results of past auction houses around the world, not just within India. Because if we want to grow as a market, we need to begin by comparing ourselves to the Western world, not just India.
Mm-hmm.
So compare market trends, compare hammer prices, and like compare the way a catalog is curated. Like Christie's and Sotheby's does a beautiful job of curating a catalog and storytelling, which is something that reels more people in than are interested in the auction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, even if I'm not interested in being part of the auction, I'm very interested in looking at the catalog, reading about the piece. And our entire industry, like the auction industry, revolves solely around valuation. And
Mm-hmm.
that skill set to understand how to do that will only come with like deep, deep and like consistent observation. The more like you will expose yourself to the prizes, the cataloging, the more confident you will become in your valuation when you start working at an auction house. So I think that's the most important piece of advice I can give. Just do your research, appreciate the value, and like learn how to value a piece.
I'm so glad you brought this point up because my next question is going to be a segue from this. And it was going to be, how can India learn from the likes of Christie, Sotheby's, Phillips, and not just learn from them, but also to compete with them at a brand name level, auctioneering
Of
around the
course.
world?
Honestly, I feel like this question can be answered for a very long time.
Of course.
But one of the best ways, like I mentioned, that Christie, Sotheby's, Phillips has created a brand name is through education. They
Mm-hmm.
have curated really good stories surrounding the rarest, most exclusive, expensive pieces of art, jewelry, fashion, watches, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
And this cataloging has reeled in the general public too. Those who are not interested in being a part of the auction. And one thing I can say positively about India is that in the past, let's say 2 decades, India has seen an increase in number of children who are pursuing art at higher levels, like at university. And if this continues, we can also give equal amount of importance towards creative fields as the Western countries do, which is where Christie's Sotheby's seem to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So as like more people enter creative careers within India, we'll not just have more artists, but we'll also have more conservators, more curators, more collectors, which would lead to a much larger collector base. So I feel like we're on the right trajectory, but we need to focus more on storytelling and like appreciating our heritage and culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first point, like education. And like one thing I've noticed is all these big auction houses, they frequently collaborate with local museums, different foundations, charities, and like estates also. And this has elevated their credibility.
Hmm.
And like it's a great place to network and meet other serious collectors who were prior not registered with the auction house. So like it's a great way to like promote, I don't know, modern creativity,
Modern art,
antique
modern
heirlooms.
creativity.
Yeah, like on a
Exactly.
very big platform. And when you do a collaboration, you are bringing two worlds together. So if you
Hmm.
collaborate with a charity, you're bringing those interested in philanthropy together with those interested in an auction house, of similar interests and mindsets who, you can just grow and expand your network with.
I'm, very surprised by the fact that our auctioning network or our auctioning background is
Mhm.
so weak in this country, or it's still quite nascent. Because, as a jewelry consumption market, India has historically been one of the biggest consumption markets. I mean, we talk about the Maharajas and we talk about the royal
Yes.
families having bought so many of the most expensive pieces ever created by
Hmm.
essentially brand houses like Cartier, Boucheron. But
Yes.
that then we talk about the future of India as an economy rising to the top, becoming now what is the fourth largest economy in the world, soon to be the third largest. So my
Uh-huh.
understanding is, what is the future of auctioneers in India? And is it always going to be just a buying space, or do we ever see ourselves becoming the sort of like buying and selling network where the likes of essentially Geneva, Paris, or now for the longest time Hong Kong have been?
Right. So as you mentioned, India has a huge collector base, like from our Maharaja times and all of that. But one thing India struggles with a bit is distress selling. The second, like if you see Christie, Sotheby's, Phillips, the way they do their storytelling is they give you a provenance in the cataloging.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you that, oh, this piece was previously owned by, this queen, that queen, and our royal families are not as comfortable with that provenance being announced because the Indian market may believe it's a distress sell. They're selling it because of the money they require.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that is not always the case. So it's that miscommunication. And I mean, yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons. But overall, I see the future of the auction industry in India to be very promising. The number of people registering within our auction house itself is only growing, and art in India is appreciating at an exponential level. There are multiple buyers and sellers. So because it's increasing at such high levels, collectors are willing to sell their pieces and other collectors are willing to buy. Like I mentioned, a 58 crore tie-up Meta diagonal was sold in a previous auction, and the most expensive Indian modern art painting was the MF Hussain Gram Yatra, which was sold not through AstaGuru, but 118 crores. So we're clearly going the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And in jewelry as well, there's always demand for like unique and collectible pieces, and people are becoming more educated and eager to explore alternative investments as opposed to just the stock market or property. So I really believe we're going towards a more promising and exciting trajectory, but it may take us a bit longer to get there.
I mean, the world is turning to India towards, everything. When we talk about essentially
Exactly.
Prada makes a Kolhapuri chappal targeted towards the Indian
Yes,
audience. You see Bulgari
100%.
making essentially Mangal Sutra and wedding jewelry. So you,
Bulgari has made an entire line of kadhas. They're bangles only, but they're like kadhas
hmm.
that was made primarily for the Indian market. And we sell that, I mean, we keep that in our auction house as well. We have it in our upcoming auction next week.
Hmm.
So that's how we saw it. Bulgari has also created pieces primarily for the Indian market.
Hmm. It then brings me back to this point of what that means is essentially we need more jewelers coming out of India. I mean, we've always been a strong buying market, and you see
Mhm.
that a lot of people are very excited to be buying branded jewelry and to be buying things that are extremely high valued from brands. But
Exactly.
when I talk about the Indian jewelry market as a market for selling and designing, there are a handful of names that come out. Of course, Viren Bhagat comes to
Bhagat, I was
my
just going to
mind,
say yes.
number one.
There's
Uh,
VAC.
yeah, there's a few other jewelers of Delhi. There's Hazuri Lal. There's of course
Yes.
Gem Palace of Jaipur, which has been historically very
Yes.
strong. But what I mean is that there's always this strong sense that in India, when you come up with something creative, it's always going to be copied and going to be made a cheap replica of. So how do we go about and solve that problem? Like, what is a way that we can kind of address that problem?
The whole counterfeit problem and everything. Oh, I think it would start by recognition. One hesitation many auction houses have is writing the name of the
The design.
designer or brand,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that they have curated this piece from,
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of not defeats the purpose, but it may seem a bit redundant. But one thing to understand is we never hide the artist's name in a painting.
Mm-hmm.
So why should we hide it in a piece of jewelry?
Mm-hmm.
And the way we source our jewelry, again, like I said, back to the first question, can a babu make it?
Mm-hmm.
Usually the answer is no. So because the answer is no, it's being featured. So I think it should start with internal appreciation and respect for the consigner,
Mm-hmm.
and giving them the recognition they truly deserve, so that they are also more inclined to give more pieces to an auction house and we get global recognition, which we deserve.
Mm-hmm. So now we come to our last segment. It's been an extremely interesting conversation and debate, and I'm sure if we extend it another 20 minutes or an hour, we can still continue to talk about more things because
Yeah.
it's such a large field. I mean, we've covered parts of it being just jewelry, but when I talk about paintings being a whole different segment of what you do, I
Yes.
still feel the painting market is a lot bigger than jewelry. Would you agree in
It's
terms of the auction
it's
space?
huge. I'll tell you when it grew. I'll just give you something fun to like know. Basically, during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
as our clientele is mainly like ultra HNIs, during COVID, a lot of our clients were sitting at home.
Mm-hmm.
There was nowhere to go. That's when they realized, man, my walls are really empty. And that is the time when our team of client relations managers were able to get a hold of these people. Getting
Mm-hmm.
a hold of people on a Monday to Friday gets a bit difficult because
Mm-hmm.
everybody has their own like commitments. But in COVID, that was not an issue. So
Mm-hmm.
we were able to reach a lot of people. People were willing to talk to us. And through this whole process, the art world grew exponentially within India,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just growing. It's amazing, and we have got the nine treasures of India, which are not allowed to leave India. These are nine artists from
Mm-hmm.
modern art period who are not allowed to leave India. And I just feel like this exclusivity has really helped the Indian market grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's put us on the radar, and it has made us proud of our own pieces. Like, we are basically saying that our piece is not allowed to leave India.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that exclusivity we have towards those pieces, it's amazing. So like anything made by Raja Ravi Varma,
Mm-hmm.
anything made by Amrita Shergill, all of these pieces, they're not allowed to leave India. And that's something to be proud of. They're the
I'm
national treasures.
I'm a huge fan of Mughal art, and particularly because it's very architectural, and it's where kind of my background
Yes,
is as well. But what I love about that is that there's so much talent in this country that's homegrown, homebound, but
exactly.
for the
So
longest
much.
time it's been kind of at the validation of the rest of the world. And I feel
Mhm.
now in the last about 15 or 20 years is where we've really broken out from that shell. And that's
Exactly.
why I wanted to ask you, because you're kind of the forefront of what is decided to be something that's going to be introduced in the market. How do you decide when you
Mhm.
want to take a chance on a new artist? Like what pushes you guys to say, let's try this guy? He's new, he's young, but he's got this excitement about him. How do you decide that?
Of course. So the first thing, see, auction houses rely a lot on pricing,
Mm-hmm.
and we have two areas of two criterias that make us attractive to a customer. First is our exclusivity towards a piece. So we're selling a Hussein. That's it. End of discussion. It's a Hussein. And the
Mm-hmm.
second thing is price should be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
So I have some clients too who, on a very regular basis, tell me, I don't want to spend so much money. I'm looking for art piece for 2 lakhs,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And as we have thousands of registrants, we're able to see what kind of pieces they want. They may say, oh, we like abstract, we like this. So then, we start curating a catalog accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get any new talent that wants to be introduced via AstaGuru, we focus on two things. One, the medium they use or the theme or aesthetic they have, does it match what our clients want?
Mm-hmm.
And two, how are they priced? If you have a new talent and he's or she is selling their piece of work for 10 lakhs and our in-house valuation team does not believe it should be more than one,
Mm-hmm.
that may be someone we don't consider at the moment. But if the price matches, the aesthetic matches, then it's someone we're happy to take a shot on.
Hmm.
And as it is a consigner, if the piece doesn't sell, it goes back, and we can see, oh, this didn't work, this worked. Maybe the artist can give us three more pieces in the future.
Hmm. That's so exciting. Like the whole idea of it's an abstract piece of work or it's a piece of jewelry.
Mhm.
To define or to try to quantify that, that's I think where the real challenge lies. And hats
That
off to
it
you
really is,
guys.
which is why my biggest piece of advice for the young people would be to do your research, because you may look at a painting and not be able to value it because you don't understand it. You can't understand everything. But if you see Sotheby's, Christie's, Pandos, or even if you focus on Indian auction houses to see the kind of price they have sold those pieces for, it will help you kind of calibrate your mind. Where you
Right.
know, okay, if I'm dealing with a Hussein, I'm not supposed to look at anything under, I don't know, 50 lakhs.
Hmm.
It's the first thing you think.
Right.
Now, whether you think it's worth 50 lakhs or not doesn't matter, because the biggest auction houses in the world, the biggest collectors believe it is.
Would you advise then to the young or younger audience? I mean, we are both of us are pretty young, but to the younger audience, because we were kind of in this state about 6 or 7 years ago, would be to just
Mhm.
look at more art, look at more jewelry, try to just get as much into it as
Just
possible.
exactly. I would just say do that. Like I said, 20 years ago, India really started supporting children who want to do art. And I would say that's the first step. The reason we have not grown at an exponential level like maybe the Western countries has is because we
Hmm.
have not internally respected our own art.
Hmm.
I feel like 30 years ago to say, oh, I'm selling a painting for 1 crore was a joke. It was a laughing matter. But now it's an attraction. Like,
Mm.
why is it 1 crore? Who is the artist? So to keep the respect internally, that's when we can start expecting it externally as well.
Hmm.
So I think the first step we have to do is just appreciate what we have to offer.
Right. So this brings us to the last segment. Every guest who comes on the podcast, and so I'm going to ask you this question once we're done as well, leaves a question for the next guest. And so sometimes it becomes a little tricky for me because I have to kind of juggle between different segments of the industry and try to connect the question. But the person last week, he was a geologist, but he's left a very interesting question, which I think applies to the art world
Oh
and
God.
auction houses in general. And so
Mhm.
this is completely, I've not prepped Ashka for this. So it's going to be very interesting for me to hear her response on this because this is quite a lengthy question. But, you know, auction houses are at the forefront of defining art and fashion. So, do you
Mhm.
feel that the price of a particular gemstone, and I'm talking more specifically about colored gemstones because there's no
Hmm.
rapport that kind of stabilizes the
Right.
prices, is
Hmm.
determined, valued, or overvalued from the real price due to auction houses? And do you think that this is something that the auction houses take a big responsibility on? Well, now I essentially think what this question means is that when we talk about a particular thing, like for example, a 200 carat Colombian emerald is worn by
Hmm.
Nita Ambani, and
Hmm.
suddenly the price of large emeralds goes up essentially,
Spikes. Yeah.
becomes double or three times. And when
Mhm.
a large Colombian emerald or a large Burmese ruby comes into the auction house and becomes a kind of a worldwide name or a fame game.
Of course.
So, do you think the auction houses play a massive role in this, and how do you think they play a role in defining these prizes?
It's a good question. So, like you said, there's no rapport in this. So the price defining does happen through several different ways. And I don't think the auction house is the primary or the biggest game changer when it comes to pricing gemstones. But what it does do is it puts it on a pedestal for the general public also.
Hmm.
Uh, like I said, through the storytelling, through the beautiful cataloging, photography, videography of the pieces, it is more accessible and appreciated by the general public, those who are not taking part in the auction.
Hmm.
So, what it does do is it does create an attraction and maybe a bit more demand for the gemstone. Maybe your average person is not going to be able to afford a 200 carat emerald, but they may be happy with like a nice 2 3 carat Zambian emerald
Hmm.
because of a piece they saw in an auction house. So, I do think that this would be one of the reasons prices would increase, because it would just increase demand and recognition towards that gemstone. It's like Paraiba. Paraiba is such an exclusive stone. It's not something everybody sees or knows about.
Hmm.
But when Sotheby's Christie's has put it on their Instagram and written record breaking price, Paraiba sold for X amount of money,
Hmm.
you've got so many new people learning about a Paraiba. Now you may get a couple more people who are interested in buying a Paraiba stone. So I just think it like helps with the demand.
Asha, thank you so much for joining us. It was truly a wonderful talk, and I think I got a lot out of it. I hope the listeners got a lot out of it as well, because it's something that I don't think is accessible to the general public, and to have
Mm-hmm.
somebody on the inside talking about the auction space made it extremely valuable for myself and for the younger listeners who might someday be interested in joining an auction house. And in
Of
particular,
course.
a lot of the youth in India who don't probably feel as appreciative in terms of what art is or what an auction house is,
Mm-hmm.
and to see that somebody working in an Indian auction house and something that's very much kind of a national treasure, and what sort of an experience that is. I just wanted to leave with one point, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Christie's recently had a sale in New York where they had three pieces which belonged to the royal family of Jaipur, and they
Mm-hmm.
auctioned them, and they went for a record breaking price of almost 10 or 11 million dollars.
Was this the
And
Kalgi and all?
this is from Christie's, and it belonged to the royal family of Jaipur. It exchanged
Okay.
hands. It had Amrit Shah Durrani's mark on it. It went to Ranjit Singh, and then eventually was sold off at the auction. But
Mm-hmm.
what I wanted to say, that if Indian pieces like that can come to auction house and be sold at record-breaking prices abroad, I feel that I hope that sometime in the future we're going to see these pieces come out in Indian auction houses and get just as much appeal as they do when they're sold in Geneva or New York. And I wanted to hear
Of
your thoughts
course.
on this as well.
No, of course. Like I said, the appreciation and respect has to come from us within India
Mm-hmm.
before we can expect it from others. And I truly think we have the potential to get there. Just a small example, we had a Kalgi listed on our auction for reserve price of 25 lakhs, which went for 1 point, I think, 2 crores.
Wow.
So so there are people who are interested in silence, but yeah, I do hope so too. I hope we get these pieces before Christie's and Sotheby's do, but it has to start by us appreciating the pieces and having the right amount of collectors and buyers who'd be willing to bid on the pieces.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it would start.
Right. Thank you so much, Ashka. It's been a pleasure. And thank you,
Thank
everyone
you,
who joined us for
Ayush.
the podcast. And I hope to see you next time where we get even more exciting guests, even more exciting stories. So thank you so much.